Those of you that are here, we have Lauren Stephenson joining us today. And Lauren is currently a captain in the Army. And as far as military occupational specialties, you do explosive ordnance disposal, which is EOD, and logistics, right?
Mhm.
And she went to UNC Chapel Hill and studied a whole bunch of things: Spanish, international relations, something like that, military leadership, right?
Yeah.
And you've been working with Valkyrie Performance since October of
Mhm.
2019, so just over 6 months, and we're doing all kinds of amazing things. So excited to have you today to do a little bit of a question and answer with you. But before we dive into some questions, why don't you just tell us a bit more about who you are and what else you do besides be a captain in the Army?
So I guess started off, so a little background behind me. Started off as a military kid, moved around a bunch. Kind of settled down a little bit near Fort Bragg, North Carolina in fifth grade, and um, was looking into colleges, looking at opportunities to pay for college, and ROTC was one of those opportunities. So I didn't really know what I was getting into. I just kind of saw it as an opportunity to fund an education. And
Mhm.
then 2 years into ROTC, I was like, because we were focusing a lot on leadership and really focusing on like what we would actually do in the Army as an officer. So I kind of like had no clue what I was doing. Thought I could be a translator or do some very specific MOS, but it turns out like throughout those 4 or 5 years of ROTC, I just started to fall in love with the idea of leadership and motivating the people around me to reach a common goal. And by the time I commissioned into the Army, it didn't really matter what my specialty was going to be. I was kind of excited for like 10 out of the 20 jobs on my list.
Mhm.
And so I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to go to explosive ordnance disposal school. That's about a year-long process down at Eglin Air Force Base. And then graduated from that as a first lieutenant, and then went to Korea for a year. And now I'm here at Fort Belvoir working in the EOD company. So I do a little bit of um, so I'm qualified in explosive ordnance disposal, but I'm an officer, so I'm more of the supervisory leadership role.
Right.
So I control the operations for the company, and then I'm also in charge of maintenance and do some logistic stuff as well. So there's kind of like a dual job there.
Right. So
But
cool.
yeah, I love it.
I love how the
Yeah,
Army
in my
does
free
that.
time, I do. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
I
what was
love
that?
how the Army does that differently. I mean, in the Marine Corps, you get one military occupational specialty, and you kind of are expected to do a lot. But I like how the Army does that differently. It's cool to see how you.
Yeah, and it's actually, I think it's unique to this specifically. So you come in as a logistics officer
Right.
with a specific like detail to
Right.
ordnance. And then you get an opportunity to further uh, dive into something else through explosive ordnance disposal. It's kind of confusing, but in the end, it allows us to be qualified in two jobs, which is cool because you kind of get both aspects of the Army. So
Yeah, and it's you get a lot of transferable skills, right? That can really
exactly,
carry
yeah.
over into whatever you do next, whether you decide to stay or get out. It's all transferable. So
Yep.
talk to us a little bit about why the Army. I know you did ROTC, but why the Army, and why did this intrigue you? What about your personality fits? What did you have to work on to get there? Just why the Army?
So I have been surrounded by the Army my whole life. And there's pictures of me and my two siblings and my dad wearing camo fatigues at the age of like 7.
Okay.
And we would like play around and like eat MREs in the backyard. Super weird. But I've been exposed to it my whole life. And so it didn't seem too far-fetched of an idea. And then my dad my dad was in the infantry and my mom was a nurse. So both of them were in the Army, and that's how they met. And so when I was in high school, I don't know, just watching my dad do his job, and he was in the Ranger Regiment for a little while, and I was always super proud of that and all of the accomplishments he'd achieved. And my mom getting certain badges and accomplishments, I just like saw that as something that was so noteworthy and something that I really looked up to. And so service was always something that I was interested in, some kind of service of some sort. I didn't know if it was missionary work or if it was going to be like join the Army. It's just something that wasn't about me. And yeah, I don't know. I was always just patriotic and wanted to do something with it. And that's kind of the outlet I put it into. So
Yeah.
it kind of just happened.
Yeah.
But
everybody has everybody obviously has their own narrative and their own stories. And tell us if one story or a significant moment stands out to you in the process or in the journey of you getting to where you are today, right? Like, you didn't wake up as a captain in the Army and just have all this self-awareness and be crushing it like you are. You've had some pivotal moments that have really been defining, and you were at a crossroads where you kind of had the choice to, decide to get better or decide to, let that impact you in a negative way. So just talk to us if there's any defining moments or stories of your journey that are worth touching base on that other people might resonate with or be inspired by.
Yeah, I know for sure there are, when I think back to ROTC, there are, well, ROTC and then finally commissioning and some of the things that have happened along the way. I think back to just like the mentorship that we had throughout ROTC. We had some of the best leaders that I've experienced, both in the Army and in ROTC. And they really like taught us leadership principles, and that going into ROTC, never viewed myself as a leader at all. I was like, oh, I'm not aggressive. I'm not type A. I'm not a loudmouth. Like, that's how I viewed leadership, as like the person that stands in front and just says, charge, let's go. I was like, that's not me. I'm not a leader. I'm just here to do a cool job. And, that's it. And so my sophomore year, it was kind of drilled into us over time that you like cultivate these leadership capabilities within yourself, and then you match them to your personality so that it becomes unique to you. So you don't need to be the type A person yelling at everybody in front of the room. You can everybody can be a leader if you choose to be, and if you choose to like cultivate those parts of yourself that are beneficial to your style. And so that was a pivotal moment of realizing that you're not just born with it, you can create it. And then going through ROTC, I relied very heavily on what I was already good at. So I love to run, love to ruck march, love to do, I don't know, different endurance-based things. And every once in a while, I noticed that I wasn't as strong as I should be physically. And I would kind of write that off and be like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on what I'm good at, because that is so embarrassing that I can't do a pull at my body weight or all of these different things. And I kind of would just ignore the weaknesses, thinking it didn't matter, until I realized that part is like an integral, like strength training is an integral part of my current job. And going through EOD school, there are multiple times when you're asked to put on a heavy bomb suit, carry heavy objects, drag a person who has just been blown up, go over and under obstacles in a bomb suit. Like, there are all these different things that you can't just rely on your running. And so because of that, and because of specific failures that I had to be able to lift things that were heavy, and I worked through those and was able to eventually accomplish those. But it was like kind of the starting process to learning to get strong and like really tackle those weaknesses and not be like ashamed of those. So
what do you feel like gave you the courage to finally start facing those weaknesses and stop avoiding them?
Embarrassment.
Yeah.
Like shame and embarrassment. So, because I like the day one of EOD school, you go through a bomb suit test. So you put on the bomb suit. There's a 155 millimeter projectile. It weighs like 105 pounds. There's obstacle course. You go around the track, go up and down, you drag things. And I could do that stuff, but I could barely pick up the heavy stuff. So, and I think the important thing was that I never quit. So I think that's why I passed. And I would pick up the heavy objects and set them down, pick them up, set them down. But I didn't have any good technique. And finally, at one point, we were walking out to a disposal range, and I dropped a 155. So like a 105-pound projectile. I was holding it in my hands, and it just slipped out, and I dropped it. And that is the biggest no-no in all of EOD, is that you don't rough handle explosives, you don't drop things. But it was so heavy, and I didn't know how to carry it. I didn't know that there was a proper technique to putting weight on your shoulder and being able to walk with that. And I had an instructor that was like, hey, this was in front of my entire class. He was like, hey, if you can't lift that and you can't walk 400 meters out to the range and carry that, then we're kicking you out of school. And I was like, I only have one day to do this. He was like, tomorrow you're going to pick that up and you're going to carry it to the demo site. And if you can't, we're kicking you out of school. He was furious. Right. And I was like, all right. So I was like, this is do or die. I'm either going to fail my first school or I'm going to do it. And so but I think the most important thing is the next day I showed up and I tried to do the same thing again, like pick it up and carry it in my arms. And he was like, all right, pause. That's not the best, most effective way to carry that. Do this, put it on your leg, put it on your shoulder, and then I could do it. So it wasn't that I didn't have the strength required to do the task. It's that I'd never been like guided and mentored and like, hey, this is a proper way to move weights. This is how you get strong. Like, but I was so embarrassed because it's happened in front of my entire class
Right.
that I was like, I will never ever let that happen again. I will never let myself be the weak link to the team physically. And so like, but that's kind of why I kind of started on this strength journey and eventually found you, which I wish I had that sooner on, some kind of direction to like focus all your energy into. But yeah,
Let's talk
that
about
was
it. I mean, this
kind
journey's
of it.
been absolutely incredible, and we've been working together for 6-7 months now. And of course, I get
Yeah.
the amazing privilege to see you every week and see all of your progress. So just to brag on you for a little bit, I mean, you're PRing essentially every single lift that we tested in the beginning, like 6 months ago. And we've been using the conjugate method, which is how we operate at Valkyrie Performance. We use conjugate strength and conditioning. And, we were very specific about with you, we were not so much heavily focused on the endurance and the running pieces. Those were kind of optional to you, like get to do if you get the strength done. So yeah, you're PRing everything. I mean, your body composition's changing, you're moving better, but why don't you share with us and share with everybody some of the, you're starting to bear the fruit of your labor, and what does that fruit look like? Tell everybody what you're experiencing.
Yeah, so I remember, I think it was after that moment in POD school, um, I kind of just started like playing around with different fitness plans. I had no idea what I was doing. I found Military Tactical Institute, which they're great because they kind of define you as a tactical athlete. Like if your job relies on fitness and your life relies on fitness, then you're an athlete. You need to train like one. So I started these different plans to try to build strength, but it wasn't really going anywhere because I didn't have that base and I didn't understand the science behind it and all of that. But I remember deadlifting for the first time and I was super excited to get 135. I was like, oh my gosh, I hit 135. This is like 4 years ago. And now like today I just pulled 265 and it's just like over time you realize like you might look at yourself at the moment and you're like, yeah, I really want to get 300. I'm like focusing on that. But if you look at where you came from, you've got to be proud of it. And that applies to everybody. It's like, just look where you came from. Yes, you can always get better. There's always something you're working on, but you always have to take a look back at where you came from and remember that. So, yeah. And I think I kind of dabbled around with different like programmings and all of that. And I was kind of wasting my energy trying different things because I was getting little injuries here and there and wasn't really balancing endurance with strength. And so that's what I've liked about working with you is that not only you've been there and you've done that. And I think that's a big part of my mental game is knowing that I have a team behind me that has been there and done that quite literally. And your strengths are the weaknesses that I'm trying to improve on. So like you're super strong. And I always looked up to that as like you could help me. You could help me like kind of focus my energy in one direction rather than bouncing around to all these programs. So
Yeah, and that's
yeah,
been cool, I think,
it.
as your coach, getting to help you. Obviously, it's a process, right? Like as the coach, I come in and I meet you where you're at, and we start going things very slowly to get to where we are now 6-7 months later. But over the process of this time, what we've really been able to do is eliminate distractions, narrow in on what you want to get good at, focus on what you want to get good at. And then what's also been cool, and this is my favorite part as being a coach. Hold on, Matt, we're on an Instagram. My husband's just like making stuff in the background. Thank you. But getting to see the progress or getting to do the work that you didn't anticipate, right? Like, so what
Yeah.
pieces of this would you say if you were to hone in on like the emotional and the mental stuff that we've been working through that's kind of surfaced that you didn't anticipate? How could you kind of paint a picture for that or tell people a little bit more about the deep, meaningful, impactful work that we've been doing that doesn't really pertain to just lifting weights, right?
Yeah. Um, I'd say like being able to hit physical goals and um I don't know, I feel a huger sense, like a much larger sense of um like self-confidence. And I think that
Mhm.
there's confidence in your leadership abilities or your skills or whatever it is. But then in the military, if you don't have the physical training and the physical strength and endurance to back that up, you feel this huge hole of weakness where like if somebody exposes this one side of you, you're gonna crumble kind of thing. And I think just slowly working on all of that has helped my overall self-confidence just fly through the roof a lot more than it had in the past. But also like a lot of my self-worth then became tied to how well I was performing physically. And we've been trying to work on that as well as making sure that, like I've been getting better at chin-ups and leg tucks and all of these things that used to be huge weaknesses of mine. But even if on one day I don't do as well as I had been hoping and I feel like I'm backsliding, like my self-worth is not tied to that. It's something that I'm constantly working on, but you kind of have to disconnect the self-worth to that after a while. So I think that's one of the biggest mental games that we've been playing is just pouring your heart and your mind into it, but at the same time, like just kind of letting things go sometimes and uh, letting yourself just I don't know, work hard, but not tie your self worth to every little thing that you do. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and even a little bit more of just being less rigid in the process, less
Mhm.
structured, right? Like we have certain things that we are intentional or very disciplined about, but I think giving you, even as your coach, like giving you the freedom to say, like, yes, I'm going to hold you accountable, but if you miss something, all right, I'm not going to be mad at you for missing a training day, or
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you why you didn't do what you said you did, right? It's more like, well, let's unpack what else is going on that's affecting you. And even one of the things I like that we really did was you have been building your at-home gym, which is so impressive during this pandemic.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got all the things at home, and on your whiteboard it was something as simple as you were, I think, keeping track of like daily accomplishments, and we just
Hmm.
reworded it to lessons learned, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you did?
For things that I got to do.
Things
Yeah.
that you got to do, right? So
Yeah.
we've been able to, and you can talk about this a little bit more, but even playing with terms a little bit more and putting less emphasis on keeping track of accomplishments and titles and things that oftentimes bring us validation and self-worth, and viewing them as things like opportunities or lessons learned, because it's all aiding
Hmm.
to who we are as a person first and foremost, and then
Yeah.
who we are as a leader and a daughter and all those other things that we are. But trying to help you kind of facilitate this generalized, enhanced overall health and well-being, so that that goes with you for the long term, whether you're, in the military
Yeah.
or out. So do you have anything to add to that that I might have missed?
Yeah. Cause I know, it was even just little things that we talk about in our coaching sessions, like, what was it? A quote from General Mattis about, no, it was a quote from Jocko about how like the welfare of your subordinates cannot be delegated to anybody else. And you were like, all right, yeah, that's a really great leadership point. Let's take that and let's take that, break that down and apply that to you specifically. How about like the welfare of yourself cannot be delegated either? Just like working with you to make things fit into who I am as a person and making them adapt to my current personality or my current like leadership style is really important too. We're not just trying to take all the best quotes from all the best leaders
Right,
and like make ourselves that leader.
right.
We're trying to take good advice and turn it into our own kind of leadership style.
Of
So
course.
yeah, that just like you can't really like separate leadership from physical training. They just kind of both go together with the mindset and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, no,
yeah.
and I love that, because one of the things we talked about in our really recent coaching calls, and it's funny because this is showing up in my personal work, in my therapy sessions, is kind of observing, taking note of what are the really, really ingrained beliefs that served us well as leaders or in the military that might not serve us or make self care harder, right? Like
Hmm.
there is no I in team, and your leaders eat last, and it's never about you. Like there's all of these beliefs that are very crucial to making you a great leader. Yes, when you're like a Marine or in the Army and you're downrange, right? But when you're
Yeah.
not and you're just existing as a human being, realizing, okay, we can kind of change what that belief means to me in this season of life so that I cannot feel selfish putting myself first or doing things to disconnect from the responsibility or to put self-care first or to take some time to enjoy anything. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we talked about that, just unlearning some of those beliefs that make self-care harder. um,
Yeah.
what are some of the other things that you wanted to make sure that you just passed on in terms of information or things that you're loving about Valkyrie Performance or things that you valued, that you want other people who may be on the fence, or whether it's they're interested in joining the military or Valkyrie Performance, just what other insight do you have?
Yeah, I think I remember, so I'm always like hesitant to speak publicly or be in a public format. But I remember one of the reasons why I found Valkyrie Performance was by listening to a podcast that you were on. So it's like I find so much value in storytelling and sharing your experiences and the things that you've learned, because like you have no idea if someone else is dealing with loneliness or feeling like they're isolated in their current leadership situation, or like they don't have a mentor that they can find that they really trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like my first day, there's nothing more. This is what I try to tell the brand new lieutenants that I interact with. It's like there's nothing more intimidating than walking into your first day as a platoon leader. You've got zero experience, like actual, like practical experience. You might have experiences from jobs and other stuff like that, but you have zero experience, and you're looking in the faces of people who have 50 plus years total combined, and you're their leader. Like you're the one that is now in charge in a way. You take ownership of everything that goes on in your unit, platoon leader, teams, company, whatever unit you're in charge of. And so there's a lot of insecurities that can arise when you're forced to, sit down with your senior NCO and counsel them and say, hey, these are my expectations for you. But you have so much, it's just it can be so intimidating to do that. But it's something that you have to do as a leader to set the standard and set the tone for how you want things to be. But also at the same time, I think it's important to realize that everybody likes to make all the jokes like, oh, officers, and there's all these officers versus enlisted jokes, and especially when you're the new platoon leader that shows up. But I think it's really important to sit down, and you can laugh at yourself a little bit, but you have a lot more to offer on day one of your job than you think you do.
Mm-hmm.
You just might not think of it in terms of tactical expertise, but like, are you a good listener? Are you personable? Can you sit down with your soldiers and talk to them about life's problems?
Mm-hmm.
Can you, are you detail oriented? Can you analyze the systems and processes that you track different things in your platoon, and can you make those better? Are you a good listener? Are you humble? And are you hungry for tactical knowledge, so that you sit down with your E7, you're like, please teach me everything. I think that there's a lot more that you bring to the table as a brand new lieutenant that you don't think about, because you've been internalized to think that like, I don't have the experience. And I think that you should just think about all the qualities that you want to embody, and what you truly do have inside you, and don't let anybody make you think that you have nothing to bring to the table. You have something, at least like a good personality or something, and then you can grow from there and learn from the people around you and listen. But don't let that intimidate you. And I think that's like the number one thing I try to tell people. And it's so much easier said than done. I kind of winged it my first year as a platoon leader, just like trying to make a difference, but trying to learn at the same time. And I think having a mentor, finding that as soon as you can, is a good person to like bounce ideas off of. So.
Mm-hmm. And what do you feel like is the number one thing that you bring to the table? What's the value that you always bring to any team you're a part of personally?
I want to own everything in my environment and listen. I think those are the two things that I'd say, like, I always want to have a good attitude and show up with passion and a fight. So Whether that's like my guy on my team didn't get paid last month, we're gonna go fight this one out. That's something like that where it's like,
Right.
I don't care who the person I'm fighting is, we're gonna go to war, even if it's the finance
Right.
office. And so
Yeah.
that kind of passion and just I don't know, I just kind of don't let you tell me no. And I
Yeah.
think if you start with that, you find that one thing that you really believe in, then you can really go from there and kind of build on those things that you bring to the table.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
Well, I know that
Yeah.
you bring so much to the table, and it's so cool. I wish I could be a fly on the wall and just get to see you in action like one day, because it is so cool that I do get to see a softer side of you, even just not being in uniform. I mean, half the times maybe every now and then you're in uniform when we meet for a call, but I know from experience, like being in uniform, not being in uniform, even just that simple taking off the cloth makes a difference. So I get to see the softer side of you and work with you on this, like everything that's underneath the layers, the soft, the hard, everything. And then I know that when you put on the cloth of the uniform, you bring it all together and it all beautifully intertwines and pours out. And that's my hope, honestly, for Valkyrie Performance, is that through every person that we get to work with, every woman that we get to connect with, we would just continue to like pour out all of this goodness into the world. Because I think that a lot more women could use that. And we've talked a little bit more recently about like leaning into the feminine energy and leaning into those innate qualities and characteristics and learning maybe not to stifle them so much depending on our environments. But that is all a work in progress and all a challenge. And we're not the only women who struggle with that. So many psychological and emotional and mental challenges, all of the above, that lots of women struggle with. And even if it starts with, us in this simple call making a difference, hopefully somebody can hear this and get some insight and influence from this. And then whether they work with us or not, I hope that they'll go out, and I know that you'll go out and continue to help other women and men. We're all in this together. But really at the end of the day, it's about you being able to get to a place that you're your best overall self. And that's when you can serve your country and serve anybody and anything to your best potential, is when you're in a good place, right? So I love
Yep.
getting to help you do that. I love it.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, I love it too. And I love that I feel like every ounce of energy I put into like identifying a weakness and trying to get better at that has been all my energy is put into like a certain direction. I don't feel like I'm wasting energy over here and over there because we've come up with like a plan of action for how to get better at certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than the way I did it 4 or 5 years ago, just kind of like trying this method, trying that method, trying this, and not really having a person to like bounce ideas off of and really create a game plan. I think that's why they tell you on day one of any kind of training, find a mentor. And that's hard to actually do because you have to find the person that has the mindset that you want or someone that can help bring that out of you. And so, mentors, military and civilian, like if you find one, keep them
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of build that network of mentorship. So, and I like, that's what I like about Valkyrie Performance. I
Yeah,
feel like I have a team behind me.
I
So,
appreciate that. And what's so cool is that we get to continue to adapt and evolve.
mhm.
The world is always adapting and evolving. It's like adapt or die, whatever you do. And even with Valkyrie Performance, we've been around for 4 years. And even in the past few months that you've been part of it, we've evolved, and we get to evolve your training, programming, or your structure. And we'll say, hey, are you having fun anymore? No, then let's make some changes. Or,
Yeah.
What's going on? Just always checking in, always adapting, just being the best at adapting. And that's what we're always working on. And of course that serves you in a leadership role and position.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if anybody joining us in has any specific questions for you. It looks like we got a bunch of people waving, so that's nice. To wave back at all of them. I don't see any questions. And I pretty much hit on all the questions I wanted to ask you. Any other key notes that you want to put out there for anybody who's listening?
I guess I was thinking also about the other side of the spectrum because I'm always like, hey, find a good mentor, right? But also on the other side, as I'm transitioning, I'm a new captain. I'm going to be in company command soon, hopefully. I'm going to have new lieutenants. So I'm thinking about like, how do I do what I ask people to do? So like I'm asking people to, work on self-improvement and find a mentor, but I'm going to be a mentor at some point too, hopefully, as a commander. So, what are the tips and tricks or what are the things that my mentors in the military have done that have been great? And I think one thing is that if you're the boss of somebody, and you see behavior and actions that you just really want in your unit, like you want that to continue, just constantly highlight it and like sit down and be personable, and it doesn't have to be this structured, rigid counseling like thing where you sit down with them and tell them 5 pages of like philosophy. It can be like some of the best bosses I've had just walk into my office and say, hey, I think that this would be really helpful for you to know. Here's an article about this. Or, hey, I had to do something really difficult today. Here's how I did it. And I know that you're going to have to do this in the future, so this might help you. Like some of my best mentors in the Army, like previous commanders, have done that. And I think just like making sure that if you're the boss, you're also mentoring your people. And if you're mentoring, you're constantly thinking about them and how you can help better them as they come behind you, and what kind of lessons you can teach them as they come behind you too. So that's kind of like the stuff that I would want to tell a future mentor.
Yeah, and that is what you're hitting on, is kind of the difference. Your experience in the military or in any profession is largely influenced based on who your boss is, or if you don't have a good mentor as a boss, then you better find one, right? You better be getting mentored. And I've seen a lot of really good Marines, at least in my experience, get out of the Marine Corps, whether they're enlisted or officer, based on sheer lack of anybody really giving a flip about them, right? And it just takes a little bit of time sitting down with somebody and asking the real questions, like how are things at home, how are things outside of work, and actually giving a shit about helping them develop in all ways, in personal ways and professional ways. What you're hitting on, yeah, I mean, that to me is what makes the difference between a good leader and a great leader. The great leader is the one who does those little things just a little bit above and beyond, subtly and consistently, just really caring. So I know that you care. I know that you care about the people you lead and the people you work with, and you're a great team player. I see that. And so it'll be cool to see your command philosophy really sparkle and shine and come into fruition as you come into complete alignment and confidence with who you are and who you are becoming, which is the coolest piece, because as you are a leader, things change and your values change. But if you're really doing that deep work and you're really completely aligned in who you are as a leader and as a person, you're going to be unstoppable. And the people you lead will feel that, and they will be able to have the courage to do that too. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Lauren. Well, thank you so much for joining in today. It's obviously such a pleasure working with you. I know that at least one person will get something from this. I'm going to save it and post it on our YouTube channel. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you or has questions for you after this, what's the best way to reach you for that?
Yeah, you could, if you want to follow me on Instagram and message me there, or my Gmail is lauren.marie2014@gmail.com. Or you can just reach out to Valkyrie and they'll have my contact information. Any of those, So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.